So we covered the product part, and what we want to do now is to go more into the business perspective to see what are the best practices for optimizing the loop, looking at monetization and user acquisition, using some of the tools that we have, but you can also do the same level of optimization with other tools if available. But the bottom line that we want to get out of this presentation is best practices to add monetization, user acquisition, and closing the loop between the two edges. I'll start with ad monetization, and then we'll move to the other topic. You all probably know ad monetization and the LTV, that you're generating in your game depends on two main things. One is the retention that you're generating, and the second will be the ARPDAU, either from IIP or from ads. When we are looking at ads ARPDAU or the ads LTV and how it impacts different aspects of your game, what I tend to do is to look at it at two steps. In the first step, you are taking your daily active users and you are generating X amount of impressions out of it, right? This one depends really on which ad units you decide to implement in your game, and what is the implementation of each ad unit. If it's user-initiated interstitial, it's your decision, right? How often do you want to show an impression? If it's user-initiated, like rewarded video or offer wall, it's how you implement the ad unit inside the game in order to generate engagement and impression per users. After you took your daily active users and you managed to generate 3x, let's say 3 impressions per daily active users, you are moving into step B, where you want to optimize the impressions that you have generated and to generate maximum revenue, to have maximum LTV. And this mainly depends on how well you manage your waterfall, or what is your total eCPM revenue per 1,000 impressions. We're going to look at these steps separately. I'll start with step number 1. How do you decide what is the best way to convert your DAU into impressions? As you all know, we in ironSource divide the ad units into 2 buckets. The first bucket will be system-initiated ads, mainly interstitial. Banners are there as well, but let's ignore them for a second. And the value of interstitial are pretty clear. It improves your ARPDAU, your ad ARPDAU, right? We will touch IIP in a second. It can risk your retention, really depends on the game and how you implement interstitial in it. We'll touch it as well. For user-initiated ads, rewarded video and offer wall, the first thing that happens if you add them is that, again, you are generating more ad ARPDAU out of these ad units. The second impact, which is quite interesting, is that usually retention goes up, right? Which is the opposite effect of system-initiated, mainly because users have more content to engage with. They can make more progress in the game. By the way, when I say retention, I mean retention and session length. Both of them will affect your LTV about the same way. But the main concern of user-initiated, under the assumption it improves ARPDAU and improves the retention, is that it can compete with IIP and maybe cannibalize some of your IIP and generate lower total ARPU when we are looking at the 2 different tools to generate ARPU. If we put it in the graph, it looks something like this, right? For system-initiated ads, what you can see here is the average ads per user. Are you showing 1 interstitial per user or 20 interstitial per user? As you are showing more interstitial per user, the ARPDAU, average revenue per daily active user, this is a daily metric, goes up. By the way, as you can see, it's not a linear graph, right? Because the incrementality of the later impressions is lower than the first impressions, because we live in a performance world where most of the revenue is based on installs and CPIs, and we know that the conversion is lower for later impressions. So ARPDAU is going up, not in a linear way, but going up. Retention can stay the same if you are very ad-based and you put the interstitial in the right places. It can also go down if you have too many interstitials, or if users don't use to see interstitial and it harms their experience. And if retention can go down, then IIP is in risk as well. This is the left side. When we are looking at the average ads per user, average rewarded video impressions, average offer wall impressions per user, pretty much the same. The ARPDAU is going up in the same way. Incrementality is lower as the impression is later. Retention is usually increasing when users engage more with rewarded video. They play longer, they enjoy more virtual good of the app. But the big question mark is what happens to your IIP. If nothing happens, then you're able to generate more and higher ARPU. If the IIP goes down, then what wins what? This is the big question. And the rule of thumb that we use today is that for ad-based games, system-initiated ad, interstitial, the question is what is maximizing the ARPU, right? ARPU go up, retention goes down. Sometimes it will be 4 impressions per user a day, sometimes it will be 7 impressions per user a day. Really depends on the game, what is the mini session length and many other metrics. Well, for user-initiated ads, and ad-based games don't have IIP, we want to generate maximum engagement with rewarded video, right? Under the assumptions that as user will watch more impression of rewarded video, ARPDA will go up, retention will go up, and there is no IIP to risk, then we want to maximize the number of impressions of RV in this type of games. The challenge there is that because you don't have a strong virtual economy, there is less to offer to the users. This is why we see idle games as an example, and many idle games these days are leaning on ad monetization more than IIP. They are able to generate pretty much good engagement rate here because there is more virtual goods to offer. But I think that there are a few good examples for hyper-casual that have cracked the virtual economy as well. They managed to generate the value, and they are able to generate high implementation of rewarded video and to enjoy the two good effects, more ARPDAU and better retention for this. For IIP-based games, we already know that harming the retention, which usually will harm your IIP, probably doesn't justify the ARPDAU that you get, the 7 or 8 cents a day that you get on the United States. And therefore, there the question mark is whether you want to show interstitial to non-payers, to low tiers where IIP is less important or you have less to risk, and then you can enjoy the added value of increasing your ARPDAU without paying the price of the cannibalizing your retention and IIP. And for rewarded video and offer wall for IIP-based games, what you want to do is to find the sweet spot that maximizes your total ARPU, right? You are generating revenue from these ad units. You don't want to risk your IIP, and you need to find what is the right capping, what is the right reward that generate the highest ARPU for you. Maybe it sounds easy on the slide, but we know how it is. How do you decide how many impressions you are going to show in hyper-casual game? Is it every 30, 45, 60 seconds? How would you decide if you are going to have 50 coins, 100 coins, and 150 coins for each rewarded video? What will generate the maximum ARPU? The product guys talked a little bit about what we are planning for our midterm roadmap with Optimizer that will do all of this and will run simultaneously many tests to find the right balance. But until we have this ARPU auto-optimization, we need to do it manually, and we need to have few tools in order to do it. And I'm going to deep dive in 3 different tools. I'm going to discuss about how we do it in ironSource. If you have your own tools, you should do it in the same way. I'll start with data, which is super important. As you probably know, when we are looking at the impressions per user that you are able to generate, we break it down into 2 steps again. One is engagement rate, meaning what share of users watches at least 1 impression a day. And the second will be usage rate. If you have 30% engagement rate, it means that 30% of your users watch rewarded video, and you have 4 usage rate, meaning each one of them is watching 4 rewarded video on average, you are able to generate 1.2 impressions per active users. The main thing is to monitor it. This is the reporting that we offer in our platform. Others can offer different reporting, but what we are looking at is for each ad unit, besides the ARPDAU and the regular metrics, what is the engagement rate with the ad unit, with rewarded video, with interstitial? What is the usage rate? And what the total impression per DAU rate that you are able to generate? By the way, you can break down, and you should break down this data, of course, per country, because different countries will have different performance, but also per placement. If you have 6 different rewarded video placement, one is end of level, one is in the main screen, one is to double your winning prize, or whatever, you should break down and look at the engagement rate and usage rate per placement to understand what is working well, what should be improved. Same for the other analytics that we offer in our platform, which is the cohorts analytics. And what you can see here is to deep dive into the engagement with different ad units throughout the life of the user, right? So here for this example, you can see that for rewarded video, In the first day, the engagement rate gets to be super high, 55%, but it's constantly going down. It means that users are making progress in the game, but engaging less and less with rewarded video. Why? Maybe you didn't match the reward in later stages to the status of the virtual good or any other things, but the bottom line that I try to give you here is that, first of all, you need to have data in order to be able to analyze your engagement with ads in the game, in order to be able to break down. And if you have low numbers, to understand where is it coming from? Is it from a specific placement, or is it from a specific ad unit? And then you can compare it to the benchmarks that we see in the industry. This is also related to part of what the product offered. This is just an example of rewarded video in the US, but we have many, many more of these. And this is what we want to add to our platform. So you'll be able to look at your engagement rate per app, per country, per placement, and to see what is the benchmark of your genre, of idle, of hyper-casual, and how well are you doing to understand how much potential there is in investing in this improvement. So we said data reporting. The next thing, which again was discussed here, is A/B testing. We launched the A/B testing tool a year ago. Zuta spoke about it. I'm not going to speak about the product itself. I just want to take it more to the business side. These are the main users that we see among the different tests conducted in our mediation. And although I decided to put A/B testing under step 1, optimizing the ad implementation and optimizing your impressions per user rate, the A/B testing model is actually helping you with step 1 and 2, right? For step 1, introducing new ad unit, change the capping, the pacing, the frequency of each ad unit, optimize the placement, the reward, offer higher reward. This is where A/B testing tool help you with step number 1, finding the optimal implementation and impressions ratio. But A/B testing tool will also help you with number 2. We spoke a lot about in-app bidding, right? It looks like it's generating significant value to app developers, but would you want to A/B test what is better, in-app bidding or maybe manual waterfall? These days is still performing better. Should you have 40 instances, 70 instances, or 20 instances in the waterfall? From one end, more instances, meaning better optimization, better competition for each impression. On the other hand, more instances, meaning it takes more latency, it takes more time, and you might lose impressions by having it. What generates better LTV? This is the question mark that you want to ask. Should you run competitors' ads or not? Right? How will it impact your retention? How will it impact the eCPM that you are getting? Would you want to show the X button after 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds? These are dilemmas that actually related to step number B. How do I optimize the amount of impressions I've managed to generate by implementing ad units and generating the maximum eCPM? And I want to invite Kelly from Big Fish. Kelly, where are you? Kelly will share how Big Fish, which is a good example for combination of IIP and ads, are doing their A/B testing. Go for it.
Hey guys, my name is Kelly, and I'm currently at a Big Fish leading all ad monetization strategy. Just a little bit about myself and our company is I've been in this ad tech industry about little more than 8 years. Current companies are listed, Glue and Zynga, and before it was Entertainment and Viacom. So I've been in this gaming industry for about good 5-6 years now. So let me talk about myself a little bit later. And for our company is as go Big Fish, we are acquired by Aristocrat, and we have a digital sector for our Big Fish games and a product madness and Plarium, and I believe one of our Plarium guys here. So we are owned by a slot company that's based in Australia. And so I don't know if you guys heard of Fairway Solitaire or not. It's been out for a while now. So we launched this game in 2012 on mobile. Before it was on web games starting 2007. So this game's been out for a while. So we weren't really, this is a bit of a game. It's just a solitaire game that's based on golf themed. Right now, our monetization focus is IAP focus and a little bit of help of advertising. So before I joined, we were about 90-something% monetized through IAP. But after we did some little bit of monetization, we are at about 80-20 percentage. So 20 of it is coming from advertising. So now we've changed our focus, saying IAP focus with help of advertising, and I want to grow that into 70-30 or eventually a little more than that. So I want to go over a few of the, let's see, tests that I've tried on this Fairway Solitaire. Because it's such an old game, nobody actually thought to do anything about it because we are making a lot of money on this game, so let's just not change anything. But when I've joined Big Fish about a little more than a year ago, so when I first joined, I've noticed one of our placement actually has 7 frequency cap a day without pacing. So I figured let's add a pacing because I never seen any actually placement with no pacing. So let's add a pacing to 10 to 15 minutes. And we A/B tested based on 25% control, 75% in testing group. Result were we saw a 12% lift in ARPDU. So we found that at obviously a success test. But definitely the challenge was we saw a big drop in the first few days, and it's really hard for me to actually talk to my devs and game team, trying to convince them let's wait a few more days because every day counts as a revenue. So challenge was, I guess, explaining it to our devs that it takes more than 2 weeks to actually find the sweet spot. But eventually, after running it for little over 3 weeks, we found a sweet spot. Eventually, we are 12% higher in ARPDU, and right now it's a little more than that. But this was one of the pacing cap tests that we ran through ironSource. And one more thing is, I'm sure everybody wants to run this waterfall test, is we tested out 2 different waterfall. One as is what we were set it to. Other one is and again, we went with the 75-25% approach. So 25% as a control, 75% with the new testing group. So when you tested that, so in waterfall test, what we did was we tried a different network as a first look, and to see if you're making more money or not. And we are about 22% lift at ARPDU. Challenge was, I think, ironSource rep I went through a little bit in the beginning, is time spent on setting up a new waterfall actually took very long time. So for me, right now I'm a team of 2. So for me, doing that is a big challenge. It's not like a 5-minute, 10-minute work. So in order for me to do that, we have a pretty granular waterfall. So in order for me to replicate that to a different testing B, took a little more than, I don't know, 1 to 2 hours. So just for us to test that was the biggest challenge, just more of on my end. But overall, what testing out this was definitely worth a 22% lift. We did a lot of more tests, but I figure I'll just show you guys these 2 cases of it. So if you have any question, I can give you guys more details in person later. So my whole thing after this whole 5 minutes of presentation is always be A/B testing. I know it's really hard to actually try to go to A/B testing because once you first integrate any real video, any kind of advertising, you kind of set it and forget it. You just say, okay, let's change the waterfall. That's about it. But always come up with a new idea. Let's try the new pacing, new frequency cap, reward amount, waterfall, changes, adding new network, or even adding new ad unit, which we are currently doing with ironSource's testing. So we will get that result in a few weeks. And always looking at data, the 3rd tab is the next thing where because even though I know every big company has got their own BI team and everything, but it takes a little bit longer to go through them versus I found that A/B testing through ironSource actually has a really easy tab for me to just kind of go through and read, are we actually making money or not, versus waiting for our BI to get back to me for 2-3 weeks. So it was really easier for me to do it. And the last tab is let's make more money with A/B testing. And that's about it.
Amazing. Cool. So this was for A/B testing. The last tool that I want to discuss when you are doing step 1 and deciding what is the optimal implementation of ads and what is the sweet spot for you in terms of impressions per user is segmentation. Here is an example of one of the publishers that are using our segmentation tool. And what you can see there, and without revealing anything further than that, is that they divided their groups of users into 3 groups. I'm actually not even sure what is the difference between 2 and 3. I don't need to be sure. But it's clearly that number 1 are spenders, which they decided not to show any interstitial, right? They switched off the interstitial. It's a bit related to what we said in the beginning, that we see that for IAP users, showing interstitial usually won't improve your total ARPU. But you can see they also look at other groups that are not paying or have low probability to pay if they want to do it in advance using prediction model, and then they are utilizing interstitial. Here they have another group that they are actually offering higher reward because again, they are not competing with IIP. And this is an opportunity to generate higher engagement rate, higher usage rate, more rewarded video ARPU without risking your IIP. You can use it for many things, and I think that segmentation is a must tool, at least for whoever has IIP, because not all users should have the same ad monetization implementation. Different users should have a different experience. We're going to hear about it a little bit from Nir, the CMO of Playtika, who's going to speak here in about 2 hours about how they decide and sharing different experiences to different group of users. So this was step number 1, right? We look at the data, we look at A/B testing, we look at segmentation, and we're building the right implementation of ad units in order to generate and find the sweet spot of each ad unit in our game. Next, we want to go to waterfall management, which is pretty much straightforward. We discussed it. The thing we need to start with is allowing a bidding, right? We discussed it a lot. Again, by the way, it can be A/B tested to see the incremental value that it brings. But besides of this, we have the regular, and until all networks will support in a bidding, and it might take a while until different networks will be ready, we still have the traditional waterfall that we are managing. What we found as the optimal setup of waterfall in order to generate maximum LTV is to first have different waterfalls per country or group of countries, to have around 40 instances, up to 50 maximum. This is where we found the sweet spot between latency and optimizing the revenue per each impression. We always recommend, besides the manual instances in fixed CPMs, to have for each network at least 1 instance in auto optimization based on rev share, right? We know that for some users, where the data science of the different networks value them as a low tier, maybe no one will decide to serve an impression for a commitment of eCPM. And this is where a rev share and competition in the rev share world as well can help you fill more impressions and leave less impressions that are going to no one fill. And at the end of the day, you want to optimize your waterfall based on fill rate, right? If you have an instance with 0 or 0.2% fill rate, probably the latency cost doesn't justify the added value. If you have an instance with 10% availability rate, you probably can split this instance into 2, increase the eCPM, and improve your eCPM and waterfall. This was ad monetization. How are we maximizing the ARPU that we are generating, mainly from ads, but also considering the different effect on IIP. Let's move to the other side of the growth loop for the user acquisition side. Evgeny discussed it, right? The volume that you are going to get while you are doing user acquisition with ironSource, but also with any other network, depends on 2 main things. What is your IPM, or how well you convert users into installs? IPM is installs per 1,000,000 impressions, installs per 1,000 impressions. And what is your CPI, how much you are paying? If you double these 2, this is your eCPM as an advertiser, and according to the eCPM of advertiser, ironSource Data Science decides whether to show your campaign or other campaign with better eCPM as an advertiser. Just like monetization, I split it to 2 different worlds. One is how I'm optimizing my IPM. The second will be how do I optimize my CPI. I am not going to discuss IPM optimization. We have a lot of best practices here. What type of creatives should you use? How many creatives, how many playables should you test? How often should you refresh it? What is the importance of localization? We have tomorrow a full discussion, a full deck about IPM, and we have a roundtable today to discuss all of this. I'm going to focus on step number B, which is the CPI optimization and how you optimize your bids world. And I think that there are three main things to follow in this world. The first one is choose the right KPI. I think that for IAP-based companies, it's pretty clear, and they are doing it for a long while, but for ad-based companies, we still see many advertisers that are bidding according to metrics that shouldn't be your leading indicator. For instance, retention, for instance, session length, for instance, impressions per user, because if you are optimizing toward retention, you are ignoring the session length of this group of users, you are ignoring the number of impressions that they watched, and you are ignoring the value of each impression, where they were served by high instances or low instances, and then you are optimizing toward the wrong goal. I know that there are good reasons to optimize toward retention if you want to build DAO and not toward ARPU, but I think that in most cases, ARPU should have a very, very big weight, and probably the biggest, in your CPI optimization. This is what you should look at, right? All the tracking companies, by the way, that offer ad revenue metrics, they don't have the mediation and instances performance. They offer it either based on retention or app open, or the most advanced one is impressions per user, which is also ignoring the value of each impression. It's not really the dollars that you are making out of these users. It's important, by the way, when you are building your LTV curve, to build it for both IAP and ads, and we know that even if the final value is similar, we know that the LTV curve of each channel, IAP and ads, behaves differently, and it's important to put them into and merge them into one LTV curve so you can actually understand, okay, after day 3, this is the percentage I want to be in order to meet my profitability goals. It's also important to do different LTV curves per countries. We still have many advertisers, and I think that we're going to discuss it tomorrow, that are not analyzing the LTV different for each country and having the same ROAS goal for countries with different performance. Again, I'm closing the loop into the monetization. What we are trying to offer on the mediation part is exactly this. We have the cohorts analysis that show you the LTV. You can break down it per cohort. You can see changes in LTV in order to be able to choose the right KPI and to optimize your UA toward the right goal. The second best practice for CPI management is to go granular. Amir, our VP revenue, is going to discuss market trends, but today we still have about 25 or 30% of the campaigns that are bidding the same for all sources. And I'm going to touch it in a second. We know that different groups of users will have different quality, will have different LTV and ARPU, if this is what we are optimizing toward. Of course, that countries, right, but I think that this is more basic to be different in the US and in the tier 2 countries. But also we know that different applications have very, very, very different LTV. Of course, for IAP developers, same for ads. We know that devices, users that you will buy on iPhone X in the United States, will have different LTV than users that you are buying in different devices in the United States, and ad units as well. Users that you are buying from rewarded video are not generating the same LTV as users that you are buying from interstitial. And if you are not going granular, you are leaving potential on the table, and I want to run on 2 minutes a short example of what can happen. Let's play a game. We are all a game developer. We have average LTV of 50 cents. We have no K factor to simplicity, for simplicity, and we want to optimize toward 30% margin goal. We are buying in 2 sources, A and B. The 2 sources can be app A and app B that we are buying users from, device A and device B, RV and interstitial, different groups of users that we are doing user acquisition for. If we are not doing granular bidding and we are looking at this group as a whole, we probably don't even know what is the actual LTV difference. We just see the 50 cents, which is the total LTV of our app. We probably bid 35 cents, right, in both 2 sources because we are aiming for 35% margin, for 30% margin, which is 35 cents. Here we are actually buying and losing money just because we are not seeing it and not analyzing that this is what happens. And let's say that we get 10K and 10K installs just as an example, and this is what generates the 50 cents. 10K installs of 30 cents LTV and 10K installs of 50 cents LTV. Now let's see what happens if you are looking at the actual LTV per source and you're optimizing toward this. You will drop your CPI on source A to 21 cents because you want to optimize toward 30% margin. Your scale will drop as well. I don't know to what number, depends on many, many things. Let's assume 5K, it can be any other number. You will increase your CPI on source B, right, to 49 cents, and your scale will go up significantly. And what you will see that happens, and this is again closing the loop and what we discussed here many times, how UA and ad monetization affect each other, is that by changing your UA strategy, your LTV is going to go up, right? You didn't change anything in the product. You didn't change the ads implementation. You didn't change the waterfall. You are just buying more of the users that have high retention, more impressions, or being served in the high eCPMs instances in the waterfall because the value of the networks value them higher. You can potentially get increase in installs, by the way, not in all cases, depends on how much the revenue, the scale dropped in its source. And in general, you should generate more revenue with same or more installs, higher LTV, with exact the same margin, only by changing and going granular in your user acquisition strategy. Again, closing the loop, ad monetization and UA. If you are using our mediation and are doing user acquisition with us, we have all this data served for you, right? You can see the campaign performance in this example per app. You can see the different metrics. You can see the IIP that these specific users that you bought from Hit the Clown are generating. It's based on post-install events that we are getting. You can see the ad revenue and the average ad LTV that you are generating from the Hit the Clown user that you acquired based on the mediation data, and we see how many impressions they were watching and what was the value of each impression. And you can optimize through this, seeing the total revenue, the total LTV per different groups of user. The third best practice for CPI management is to constantly update. And I think it's important because we do see some that are doing this process that I just described, but they are doing it once every month, once every 2 months, because again, we discussed a lot of automation here and how much work is it to analyze and then to put it into Excel and to calculate and to upload the there is a lot of work behind it, and they are not updating it constantly. And then 3 things are changing in the market. First of all, your game is changing, right? The LTV that you are generating, you are updating the game, you are doing different things. This is, I guess, a bit more clear. Other thing that changes is the quality of the source is changing. You used to buy from Hit the Clone and the LTV was X, but a month after, the LTV of these users is different because they changed their user acquisition strategy, they changed their product. Whatever change they made, it actually led to different quality in Europe. And if you are keep bidding based on the quality that you saw 2 months ago, again, you are not bidding the right price. And another important one, and I think that these days is even more important, definitely with what happens in hyper-casual and new entries in the market, is that we see all the time new apps, charts from nothing to be very, very big. Some of them are based on featured apps, etc., and their life cycle is relatively low, right? They are going to the top 10 in the US, stay there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then slowly going down. Part of the market is these apps that are going for a very short time and don't go down. If you are not reacting in real time, when you start getting installs and see the quality, decide what the CPI and react, until the time that you understand what you want to bid, it doesn't really matter how well you will optimize the source because it already got much smaller than it used to be. And this is what leads me to the last part of my presentation, closing the loop and how we try with some automation to connect ad monetization and user acquisition and to make sure that you are optimizing the profit of the game looking at these 2 fronts. I will start with ROAS Optimizer because ROAS Optimizer is a tool that we built exactly to answer the 3 main best practices for CPI optimization. What the cross promotion will do is, first of all, it will change your CPI across all applications that you are buying from in ironSource network. It will do it based on historical revenue, right? We are looking at the historical LTV that these apps have been generating for you. We also consider current monetization trend of your game. So if we see that the average LTV of your game is going up because you introduced a new agent or whatever, we will increase the CPI because we expect that the future users will have better performance than the historical ones. We are constantly get more granular, right? We discussed about country, about sources, about devices, about ad units. As you get more granular, you will see that you will find the better users to your app, and you will be able to improve your monetization performance by doing the right user acquisition. And another important thing that related to the last point that I mentioned is that for new apps that are getting into the market, which you have no idea what should they be, they still don't have more than 10 installs from this app, we are using our network insights to calculate what should be your start bid based on the average LTV that this publisher is generating for you in other apps, based on the LTV that this publisher, similar genres are generating for you, and you already start from a better point to optimize your CPI on time. Today, almost a third of our user acquisition campaigns are being optimized by our optimizer. We have another third that are probably using their own optimizer, another third that are not optimized at all, and mainly have one bid for all sources, and definitely there is much more to achieve for these user acquisition campaigns. I want to invite next Kusei from ITI. They have one of the biggest successes that we saw lately, Rescue Cut, to share how they do their bid optimization for this game. Kusei. By the way, you have the TV here, if you want to.
Hello, my name is Kosei, and I was born in the US, and you could just call me Mark. That's my English name. And well, that's my career, what I was doing before, and I was in this industry about like 6 years ago, but before that, I was a chef and selling vinegars and stuff like that. And this is my first company for like app developing, and last year we saw this hyper casual going super, so we shifted our developing plan to hyper casual, and we got a success last month and this month right now. This is our app, Rescue Cut, and it's developed by ITI, but published by the name Mark App. I just want to be famous. I use my name, Mark App, and we are generating more than 10 million installs, and #1 in like 25 countries or whatever, and yeah, and we are getting good rollouts. And at first time, we used 50 cents for UA, and we got that 50 cents by our Excel, how we managed calculating the LTVs. And the IPMs were like 40 when I first placed the bid for 50 cents. So I just put 50 cents initially and ran them over ironSource. And after that, the IPM dropped a little bit by when it scaled a lot. So we changed to use World's Optimizer. So that's the difference. This when the 50 cents, every media was for 50 cents. But after that, we used World's Optimizer. It changed to many medias with different numbers. And after that, the ROAS increased a lot. So the UA also increased by how much? I don't know. Nadav is more clear about that. 60%?
The scale 60%, yeah. And the ROAS is 25, right?
Yeah,
that's
it grew a lot.
day one.
So
I know your campaign by heart. I optimize it every day. Don't be angry with me all the rest.
Yeah.
I'm not really doing it.
So ROAS Optimizer went very well, and it drove our UA and our revenue by that much. So you guys should use it. That's about it.
Thanks.
Okay.
I think that okay.
The optimizer has less work, automated, and no need for CPI management. Inaccurate bid per source, more high-quality user, and more scale from more apps. Thank you.
Cool. I think that one of the changes that are also interesting is that when you calculated your bid before, it was mainly based on retention, multiplying the average LTV, yes, which is, again, ignoring many important sides like the session length, the number of impressions, the value of each impression. Thanks, Kusei.
Thank you.
Cool. We are moving to the second and last tool that we are going to discuss from this world, and this cross-promotion tool. Another one that is going to combine both user acquisition and ad monetization. As you understood a little bit about this tool from the product session, it helps you to treat your several apps as an ecosystem. Again, this is also something that Nir is going to touch from the Playtika perspective, how they manage their ecosystem. It's a dedicated but separated network as ironSource network, meaning that every feature that is live with ironSource network is live on the cross-promo, no reason to ask questions. Do you have fixed CPMs on the monetization side? Yes. Do you have dynamic suppression? Can I work with optimizer? Can I do A/B testing? Can I work with the bidder? Yes. Okay, same features just like the network. It has lower fee, right? Usually today what many are doing is cross-promotion using the different networks. The problem there is that you probably pay you are paying the network margin, which let's say is around 30%. In the cross-promotion tool, we drop the fee into 10%. It means that your effective CPI is much better, and what's interesting is that you get also full transparency. You get full transparency on the margin that you pay, because it's a separate network, you can see exactly your spend of the UA side and your revenue on the monetization side. You get full transparency on how this network behaves, how many impressions, what is the eCPM, where should I put it in the waterfall? While today, if you are doing cross-promotion via the network itself, it's a black box. You have no idea what is the margin taken. You have no idea which users were served, what was the rank of your cross-promo campaigns versus external, etc. And it's coming soon as a bidder, which will make it even more efficient. In terms of best practices for the cross-promotion network, this is what we recommend to do. From the monetization perspective, number of instances according to scale. There is no right number. If your cross-promotion activity is significant, you probably need to have 10 instances just like other significant networks. If your cross-promotion activity is small, it's 5% of your UA, probably 3 instances will be enough because the fill rate of each instance will be too low. You should spread the cross-promotion throughout the waterfall so it will be able to compete in different parts of the waterfall. And you can consider, and this is more a strategy decision, whether you want to give a discounted eCPM, meaning you want to have cross-promotion with eCPM of number 3 in the first place. It will harm in some way your LTV because you are selling impressions in lower price, but you get value of maintaining users in your ecosystem and more of them, which is a different value. And this takes us also to 2020 and looking at LTV at the ecosystem and not LTV only on specific game. And then you can do user acquisition by user, get him inside your ecosystem and monetize it there. And then you can pay different prices if you know that you can move him between apps in a cheaper way. On the marketing, you should manage this source of cross-promotion just like you are managing the external sources. And if you are using our mediation, you should utilize the optimizer to optimize the bid according to the quality that you get from cross-promotion, which can be better or worse than the average. I want to invite last Rahul from Amanut to share how they do their cross-promotion activity.
Hello. Hey guys, I wish I had a better picture, but
you are beautiful. You don't need
that's the one they went with, so we have to stick with that. So I'm Rahul from Amanotes, and we're a music company from Vietnam, based out of Vietnam. And I take care of monetization, and currently we have a team of 3 to look at this, and most of our monetization is done through ad monetization. So the majority of what we do runs through ironSource mediation, and this is where we use the cross-promotion tool. So you might know one of our titles, which is Magic Tiles 3. It's one of our biggest titles, as well as one of our most popular titles because it's the longest running. And over here, apart from this title, we operate on several other games. And the issue that we were seeing is that a lot of the users that we were acquiring through all of our ad networks were actually the same users because they're cross-promoted. So we didn't have a solution before that in terms of a way to cross-promote. So we were doing it through the normal user acquisition channels. And we did try out many solutions. In this case, we eagerly approached many of the solutions out there, and we tested ironSource when they were in beta. And back then, they didn't actually have any of the dashboard systems. So me and my AM, Amit, was hardworking right there. Yeah, so we had to set up the whole thing kind of manually, and we run the test. So the main focus for us on this was to make sure that the workload was less in terms of a very smooth, seamless solution for cross-promotion, which didn't change much of the UA performance or the scale that we previously saw. And since our company has a lot of business units and each of the products work independently, we couldn't really like sacrifice one of the products for the other products. So we wanted to make sure that overall all the products were working in the same way. So that's on the reason why we tested. So this is the result from our test. So we started running cross-promotion last quarter, and we saw that the scale of cross-promoted users actually went up from 30% to 50%, while the CPI remained more or less the same or decreased in some cases. And overall, the installs as well increased during this duration. So yeah, at the end, we ended up with a solution which was very easy to go through and transfer all of our cross-promotion activity. There's no change required on the UA side, and the UA team didn't even know about it for the test duration. And for the monetization side, now the dashboard makes it much easier and very transparent in terms of the metrics that we need to see. The other big advantage is that we get clear transparency on the source to the acquisition point. So that's why we can see the clear margin over here and also track this. And overall, after we rolled this out to all of our products, we saw the scale increase from 20% to 50%. So we're very happy with it. Yep. So if you have any questions, you can ask me later. Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Will. Cool. Summary. I didn't try to sell you ironSource product if this is what you felt. My bottom line of this presentation was how to optimize and using the right tools in order to find the right balance, looking at the full funnel and the full growth loop in order to make sure that you are optimizing your game and your ecosystem. We cover the different tools both in order to optimize UA, monetization, and closing the loop, looking at both of them. And we are going to discuss a bit more of these from different angles of different developers later today. Thank you very much. We are going to break for